Welcome back to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette, and I am so glad you're here. Today's episode is packed with wisdom for anyone who is not just writing grant applications, but also preparing to lead successful teams once the grant is funded. But let's face it, getting the money is just the beginning. What happens next depends on your leadership. So I am joined today by leadership expert Jennifer Manghisi, who shares powerful and practical insights on everything from hiring to project management and vision setting. Whether you're a first-time grant writer or a seasoned I think you will walk away from today's episode with renewed confidence and clarity. So let's dive in, my friend. Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. The truth is, the grant writing process isn't always clear, but with the right guidance, proven actionable strategies, and expert insights, the process becomes easier, simpler, and yes, clearer. I am Dr. Trinette, your host of Grant Writing Made Clear, and a former nonprofit president turned distinguished professor and behavioral scientist with 2 decades of grant writing experience. I remember what it was like to be a busy nonprofit leader with little time, but big financial sustainability concerns. Over the years, I have transformed my skills from securing $1,000 foundation grants to winning multi-million-dollar federal grants. I created this podcast in response to the grant writing coaching requests I've received from nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, and professors over the years. Join me each week as I reveal insider strategies and share key lessons that turn wishful thinking into winning applications. Pull up a seat and get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Whether you're a beginner or a pro looking to sharpen your skills and create a life you love, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Welcome back to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette, and I am delighted today that we are delving into something that is incredibly important when you are writing grant proposals, but especially after you are awarded a grant, and that is leadership. So today we're talking about leadership, whether you're overseeing a research team, nonprofit staff, community members, the way you lead can shape your project success. And so I wanted to delve into leadership and leadership development. And we are delighted to have with us today Jennifer Manghisi, who brings deep expertise in leadership. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I thought we'd just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and the work you do.
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from New York. My undergraduate degree is in business management. And after undergrad, I went to work in many different fields here in New York. So I worked in fashion public relations. I've worked in real estate and retail management, but I always maintained some type of either management or leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
My longest tenure was in higher education.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last year, I went back to real estate. So I guess something about that made me want to come back.
Yes. That's great. I really appreciate that you've really been able to be a leader in various sectors. And I think that's wonderful for our audience who are also coming here with various backgrounds. So again, I'm so happy about this conversation and ready to dive in. And so my very first question is, how do you define leadership?
I think leadership are all of the things that maybe aren't so noticeable. So I think a lot of times when we look at great leadership, we say, oh, this person is so charismatic, or, oh, they're an excellent communicator. But a lot of times leadership is something that is being done behind the scenes, and it isn't always so noticeable. It's advocating for yourself and for others. It's including other people when you can tell maybe they don't feel so included. So I feel like it's a lot of the little things that maybe don't always show up to the surface, but they're there and they make a big difference.
Okay. And so, how would you define and distinguish leadership from project management? I know that's something some of my colleagues and I talk about. There is a difference between being a leader and being a project manager.
Yeah, I think a lot of times management and leadership or project management and leadership are used interchangeably, but they are very different. You can be an excellent manager and not be such a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think, someone who is a project manager, they're probably great delegators. They are seeing, what has to happen, all the moves that need to be made. They are communicating that to their team and they're hitting those deadlines and making sure the tasks are completed on time. A leader is doing all of the things that a great project manager does, and they're doing more as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they are the visionary. They
Mm-hmm.
are, seeing things from a high level,
Mm-hmm.
and they're tapping into the emotion of their team. They're showing empathy.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing people together and they're communicating well what the goal is and bringing people towards that goal. And they're excellent at change management, which tends to come up quite a bit in organizations, especially when maybe there's costs being cut or there's different changes that are happening. People feel unsettled. A great leader is tapping into that, understanding it, and helping their team through it.
I love that because it sounds like you're saying a leader is a project manager, but they are also someone who creates the vision. They bring people together, which I agree is a huge part of it. To me, a leader is someone who brings their team together, gets everyone on board, also is able to adapt in times of change. So I really appreciate you clarifying for us that a project manager helps us with the day-to-day activities, but the leader does that plus they create the vision, they bring people together to help us get to where we're trying to go. So to help us reach that vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so I also wanted to ask you because I know that being a leader doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey. And would you talk a little bit about some of the daily or weekly habits that a good leader practices to sharpen their craft, to become a better, stronger leader?
Absolutely. Well, I think, there are some people that you might know or that you might immediately think of when you think of who is a great leader. And I would ask you to think about, well, what about them makes you feel that way? Like,
Mm,
what is it that they exhibit that you feel like a great leader has? What are those qualities? What are those skills? And becoming a great leader is something that you can work towards. I think some people think that it's, either it's an innate ability or it's not.
mhm,
And I don't think that's true. I think that you might have your strengths versus somebody else, but a great leader, they are taking the time to think about what those skills, what those qualities are. And I'd say on a daily basis, when you're having an interaction with someone, if active listening isn't your strength, then consciously be thinking about how can I be listening better to this person? Have I rephrased what they've said to me back to them? Or am I just responding to respond? Because a leader is actually hearing what the person is saying and they want to understand what the person is saying. They're not just responding to respond.
yes.
So there's little things that you can be doing in your daily activities. And then weekly, I would say reflect. I think a great thing to do is if you're not somebody who writes in a journal, but if you have some other type of reflection practice to think about, okay, what did I do really great this week? And what do I feel like I missed the mark on? And then give yourself the opportunity next time to do better.
I like that. Thank you. And I was sitting here thinking about the person who is saying, I'm a leader, but I want to be a better leader. And where do they start? And it sounds like one of the places they could start is by, like you said, doing some self-reflection, also looking at others and thinking about the things about that leader that they like and the things that they would do differently. Are there other things you recommend someone do who is saying they want to be a better leader but don't really know where to start?
I'm a practical person, so I always would give advice to try different things yourself. I mean, it is definitely a trial and error process, and what works for one person might not work for somebody else. So you do have to really take the steps to see what works for you and understand the person that you are leading or the team that you are leading and what they respond to and what they don't respond to, because sometimes we might have the best intentions, but it just doesn't really hit the way that we are hoping it
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to think about the message, think about how you're tweaking that message for your audience. And I would also say there's other ways outside of work or outside of your professional life to understand the kind of leader that you want to be or become a better leader. I mean, I'm somebody who plays sports. If you're somebody who's competitive or if you do other activities, those are very easy ways to kind of tap into the type of leader you are because you're doing it without even realizing it.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, and it's also, you're building that collaboration with other people. So I would definitely say there's other ways to become that leader or tap into those skills that can be outside of your professional life.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So taking advantage of every opportunity to sharpen your leadership skills. Yeah. And so thinking about what you've seen in leadership, what would you say is a common mistake that leaders make?
I think a common mistake is that, as a leader, you tend to be you have to answer to whoever you report to, and then you also have your team that
Mm-hmm.
you're leading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the pressure of that can sometimes get to leaders where they just want to deliver without thinking about, well, what are the unintended consequences if I move quickly on this? Or how is my impulse affecting my team? Or am I going to get the result that I want? I might deliver, but is that the
Yes.
right result?
Yeah.
So I think the common mistake is that, when you're under that pressure, you just want to get it done and don't really think through everything that kind of has to happen or that's taking place in
Mm-hmm.
doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like you're managing up and down, but really needing to think about all your constituents and how you will work with them to achieve your goals. Yeah. And that makes me think about just being a relational leader, because one of the mistakes I see is people are so focused maybe on the people above them and maybe their own goals that they forget about their team. What are your thoughts about relational leadership?
I think that, great leaders will always say, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, or my team, I can't do anything without my team. I am leading the team. I might be head of the department, head of the group, but my team needs to be, they need to feel empowered. They need to feel like I'm not micromanaging them, or they can make great decisions on their own. They don't need to ask their leader, their manager for permission. You know, there needs to be this sense of this person believes in me or my company believes in me
Mm-hmm.
enough to know that I'm going to do the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
that I was hired because I have the expertise, because
Yeah.
I am experienced. And it makes a difference in the workplace when people feel that way and when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
If when they don't, there's a lot of stagnation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is important that leaders, and this does include project managers, but that leaders really convey to their team that they are valuable, that they appreciate them. And I don't know, sometimes I think people are so busy that they don't take the time to convey that. And so I'm wondering how does that work in the real world? Like, how do people find the time to convey to their team? Is it okay? So I know I always tell my team I appreciate them so much that I couldn't do this work without them. And it's genuine. I mean it. I could not do the work I do without my team. And I tell them that in groups mostly. Is it important to also share that one-on-one? How do you find the time and what does it look like in the real world?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it has to be genuine, of course, and they do have to feel like it's coming from the right place,
Mm-hmm.
not like you're just saying it to say it,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just giving the praise because you feel like that's something that you should be doing. People need to feel like, oh, they really care. Like they're really seeing that I'm putting in that effort, that I'm
Yes.
putting in that hard work.
Yes.
And words are one thing, but there are other ways to show that appreciation outside of just saying it. Some other type of thank you, I think, goes a long way. Um,
Can you give
and
an example?
it can be something so small as like, let's go to lunch together, or some other type of, maybe an award of some kind, or I think people always value a little more money.
Yes.
That of course is always a great
Yes.
thank you, but recognizing that it isn't always part of the budget. So,
Yes.
you kind of do what you can with the resources that you have.
Yes.
But I know that especially when it's been a really tough road, or when work has been very challenging, just getting that, somebody telling you, I see what you're doing and it's great, keep
Yes.
going. I think that can mean a lot to people.
Yes. Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking, I think people need to feel seen. They need to feel seen. And I think a lot of times, again, I think we're so busy that we don't pause to say thank you. We don't pause to show that appreciation. And so I just really appreciate this because I do think that as I look around, and I've been observing leaders for a while, and I do think one common mistake is we forget that people are human. We forget that they're not just workers, they are human. And so I think the leaders who go the extra mile of caring about their team, I think it goes a long way with the team. Yeah.
I agree with that. I've definitely been in conversations before with colleagues, coworkers, where it was like we weren't talking about human beings. It was like, oh, we'll just shift their schedule to here.
Yes.
And, like, let's not give them 2 days off together, like conversations like that. And I just remember thinking, wait, 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 wait.
Yes.
You're talking about somebody's life.
Yeah.
They have to adjust, whatever it is that they're taking care of outside of work, their family life, to be able to shift to that shift. We can't just do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like those kinds of conversations that I think, being a great leader, you recognize that and you speak up and advocate for your team in those moments and say,
Yes.
wait, 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 wait. I
Yes.
understand what we're trying to accomplish here, but maybe there's another way.
Yes. Yes. Always thinking about the team, right? As human, as people. Yeah. And so we've been talking about how to lead our teams. And I'm really enjoying this conversation. I think part of the puzzle is hiring good team members, right? And I know that my team, we try to be very thoughtful when we are hiring. And sometimes you still don't make the best choice, right? And you don't learn that until months in. What are your recommendations for the hiring process, for choosing good team members, good collaborators, good community partners? What should leaders be thinking about when they are making decisions to build their team?
I love this question because I've done quite a bit of hiring in my career. And the way that I hire has definitely changed over time because of what you have just said, which is that you want to make sure you're making the right decision and that the fit is there. So what I do now is I like to invite either the direct supervisor or people who do that role into the interview process, not because not because I don't feel comfortable in making the decision myself, but I want the team to be part of that decision. And also, it helps them grow their interviewing skills. But they are also able to communicate to this person what it is that they do and what is really important about what it is that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, that's not the role that I have. So I think it's beneficial to the person you're interviewing to hear that from people who are actually doing this job.
Mm-hmm.
And they can ask the hard questions. I always tend to ask questions that aren't just about, can you do this job, but I like to understand the person a little bit better. How do they communicate? How do they delegate? If you're having a conflict with a coworker, how would you manage that? I try to ask even deeper questions, more interpersonal questions, because I want to see how they're going to fit on the team and with
Mm-hmm.
the other people that we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have a way of assessing work ethic?
I think it's difficult today because people are so great at kind of presenting themselves well. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you've noticed
Yes.
that. So it can be difficult, but I ask questions like, if you have all of these competing priorities, how do you prioritize your work? Or if there are multiple people asking for you to help them with the project, who are you listening to and how are you making sure that you're getting all of it done by the time that it's supposed to be done?
That's a good question. Mm-hmm.
So by asking them kind of like time management questions and how they take direction, I can usually tell if there's someone who's going to be self-managed or if there's someone who's going to require a lot of oversight.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. And then I was just thinking about when we are writing grant proposals and we have strict deadlines, we often have very hard deadlines, and many of us are writing multiple grant proposals simultaneously in addition to other work. What are your tips for maintaining productivity and organization when you are super busy, maybe even overwhelmed? What are your tips for staying organized and being productive?
Well, this I had to learn by being in that position. And
Okay.
so, yeah. And so, a couple of years ago, and I was working full time and I was in school. And then, of course, there's other things that I was doing in my personal life, and it can be a lot. And I'm sure, your listeners, they are managing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say that helped me a lot was giving myself a schedule. And if you're not somebody who's like a super planner, I don't think it has to be like this time to this time I'm doing this time to this time I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But having some kind of framework to operate within, I
Yes.
think is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And also making sure that you are not packing your day without some you time, because
Mm-hmm.
those mental health breaks, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot speak highly
Yes.
enough of. And whatever that looks like for you, it can be a 10-minute timeout. It can be, I'm not having any screen time between this, like whatever it is to check out, I think will allow you to re-energize, restore
Yes.
that energy you need, and then keep moving on to the next
Yes.
thing.
Yes. Our listeners know that we believe in self-care. And so that was the perfect response to that question, was making sure you're taking care of yourself as well in the process. Jennifer, thank you. I think if you would give us one last thought, one last recommendation to our listeners who are thinking, okay, this sounds great. I think I know where to start. This has been so helpful. What would be your last word to them?
Just get out there and do it. I think a lot of times we question, am I doing this right? If I do this, is it going to work out? There's all this self-doubt and questions, or maybe a little imposter syndrome. Just do it. And
Yes.
then once you get in there and you start, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from them. And that's part of the process. So, try different things. If something doesn't work, try something else, and you will get there.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today. You really gave us practical guidance and insights. And so we say thank you for your time and your comments. I want to thank our audience for joining us today. I hope that today's episode is helpful and helps you to be a better leader going forward. And I hope that if it is a good episode, you enjoyed it, that you'll share it with a friend. Until next time, take good care. I hope you found this conversation with Jennifer Manghisi as insightful as I did. Whether it was her tips on hiring, her distinguishing between leadership and project management, or her thoughts about aligning with your vision, these are the kinds of leadership tools that will help you not just win grants, but deliver on them, right? We don't want to just be awarded grants. We want to deliver what we promised. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to follow the podcast, Grants Writing Made Clear, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and share it with a colleague or friend who is stepping into leadership. And that should be everybody, right? Almost everybody leads in some way. So share this episode with a friend, my friend. And if you have not already, I'd love to invite you to join our brand new Grants Writing Made Clear Facebook group. It is a space where we continue these conversations, support each other, and grow together. You can find the link to this new Grants Writing Made Clear Facebook group in the show notes. Until next time, keep showing up, keep learning, and lead with purpose. Take care, my friend. Thank you for listening to Grants Writing Made Clear. I hope today's episode gave you inspiration, confidence, and clear information that you can turn into action. Remember, you are not alone. There's a whole community here striving for the same impact. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a quick review to help more people find the show, and share this episode with others in your network. It really does make a difference. For more grant writing tips and resources, follow me on social media. Until next time, keep showing up, keep learning, and remain determined. I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye for now.